This is the tale of a boy named Devon, who, right from his birth, was despised by his parents. His misfortune was being born on the same day and at the same time as Kajin, a child blessed by the sword god Keshak. Kajin was born with a blessed body and talent, while Devon's mother only wished her son was Kajin instead. Both his mother and father were disappointed in Devon, partly because he was missing his right arm. Every night, his mother would whisper to him that he should die, and Devon, aware of this, would apologize without understanding why he was despised. He did not want to die. Before Devon was born, he overheard his father saying that he was their hope. They had high expectations for Devon, as his father could never surpass his older brother. His father hoped that Devon would be better than his brother's son. However, Devon was born with only one hand and without the blessing of a god, which shattered all his father's hopes. While Kijin played with joy and had already started walking, Devon still struggled to stand up. When Devon took his first steps, Kijin was already wielding a blade. By the time Devon held a blade for the first time, Kijin had already mastered mana and began training in Samian's swordsmanship. At some point, Kijin became the object of Devon's admiration and envy. When he reached the age of 7, he was sent as one of Kijin's assistants. It was publicly known that he was sent to support Kijin, but the truth was that his parents sold him for a large sum of money. Growing up, Kijin took advantage of him, as Devon had always been a bother to him. Kijin would take out his anger on Devon, who had no choice but to hold back his tears. It was difficult for him to bear the fact that the adults around him turned a blind eye to his situation. Devon's uncle, who was once admired, had left the family a long time ago and never returned, leaving no one to control Kijin. As a result, Kijin grew up as a boss, easily defeating everyone with his superior talent and the blessing of the sword god. Kijin's next opponent would be Devon, who was envious of Kijin's strength and talent. Despite Devon's hard work, he was not able to defeat Kijin, who had become lazy in his training and indulged in vices like alcohol and drugs. Kijin was a natural genius, while Devon was considered an idiot who worked hard. However, Devon was certain that their positions would not remain the same forever. After numerous fights, Devon finally gained the upper hand against Kijin, blinding him and delivering a decisive blow to win the fight. Despite previously losing to Kijin 21 times in a row, Devon emerged victorious after 29 years of perseverance. Everyone cheered for him, but Kijin couldn't accept the defeat and ran his sword through Devon's chest. Despite defeating Kijin, Devon's life was at stake, as only the direct line of the Samian family possessed the Sunblade Greatsword, which contained anti-magic properties. Without the intervention of the miraculous saint Layla, Devon would not have survived. When Devon regained consciousness, he found himself tied up and believed he was in hell. However, a masked person informed him that he was lucky, as Saint Layla had healed him despite his severe injuries. Devon's entire body was broken and his mana was sealed through chains. He was sentenced to life imprisonment, and his family disowned him due to accusations of sacrificing innocent children to make himself stronger. During his imprisonment, Devon received a visit from Kijin, who mocked him for his current state. Kijin had become a respected sword emperor, praised for his hard work and genius. Despite everything, Devon thanked Kijin, as it was because of him that he achieved his own strength. However, Devon's situation worsened as the prison stopped providing him with food and he began to starve. He believed it would have been better to die in the arena than to suffer this fate. Collapsing from hunger, Devon wondered if his life would have been different if he had both arms, if he was from the direct lineage, or if he had the blessing of the sword god. Despite his desire to die, Devon refused to give up, and through confusion, he opened his eyes again. He was called Vincent, and someone familiar was holding his right arm. An adult from one of the family branches informed him that he was lucky, as he was now in the presence of Saint Leila, who had healed him. Vincent was the seventh son of a Dinka, and though he initially believed it was a dream, the fresh air and his restored arm made him reconsider. The person holding his arm attempted to inflict pain using mana, but Vincent instinctively pushed him away. Confused, he apologized, not realizing the strength behind his action. The person left angrily, warning Vincent that his son would crush him and that the filial family would triumph over the main family. Memories started to resurface, including the passing of his mother after childbirth and his father's neglect. The other children treated him poorly, and even the famous Adinka sword family's 8 children looked down on him. Vincent realized that the Davin he once knew from the Samian family had become the useless mention from the Adinka family. He discovered a diary where Vincent had despised himself, losing all self-esteem and giving up on everything. It was evident that God had answered the prayer. Davin desired to live, and in his final moments, he pondered the fate of the original invention. Suddenly, he heard a voice, which initially alarmed him, believing it to be a demon attempting to deceive him. However, the voice turned out to be the original owner of the body he now inhabited. Since the original owner granted Devin his body, he no longer had a name and decided to call himself Julian Finchin. Julian faced a revelation, a gift from the gods to humans. He learned that those blessed from birth could hear this revelation, which meant that Julian himself was a god, albeit a lesser one. Originally, Julian intended to become a spiritual god, but ended up inhabiting Vincent's body. Instead, if Julian wanted to become a true god, and not just a lesser one, he had to accomplish various tasks referred to as his calling. Completing this calling would allow Julian to ascend to true godhood. Vincent acknowledged the circumstances, but made it clear that he was not interested in Julian's achievements. If everything Julian said was true, Vincent had earned a new life and would be occupied with living it, leaving no time to listen to Julian's wishes as a ghost. Julian had given up his life while Davin wished for one, but Julian's spiritual energy was running low. If that energy completely disappeared, Vincent's body would die. Vincent doubted this claim, as his body appeared healthy and not destined for an early death. However, soon after, Vincent collapsed, causing Julian to reveal the true memories of Vincent's mistreatment. Julian concluded that while Vincent appeared cowardly, he was actually preparing for revenge, which was unfitting for a 13-year-old boy. When Vincent woke up, Julian asked if he would now listen. Julian then inquired if Vincent knew the archdemon, Davin, and the hero king, Kachun, which greatly surprised Vincent. These were figures from 500 years ago, including a one-armed swordsman named Davin, who escaped from Samian prison and made a pact with the demon, consuming thousands of lives to grow stronger. He was said to have killed over 10,000 people, earning the title of a great demon in history. Vincent questioned whether this meant he had traveled 500 years into the future, as things didn't seem to make sense. However, aside from sharing the names Davin and Kajun, they both belonged to the bloodline of the Samian family. Vincent was certain that in his past life, he died in that prison, abandoned by the Samian family while they chose the Storm Sword. The one-armed swordsman died alone, and the Storm Sword became the Sword Emperor, or so it was assumed. The fabrication of the story, referring to them as the Great Demon King and Hero, angered Vincent. Julian joked, revealing that Kajun was a friend who truly loved Devin, further fueling Vincent's anger, as he knew this was a fictional tale. Julian asked Vincent if he was someone from that time in his past life, clarifying that the story was a combination of stories left behind by the victors. Julian continued, mentioning that the king worked with the greatest hero of that time, his best friend, the Emperor of the Sun Sword, to defeat the great demon, Davin. The Emperor of the Sun, Arsen, was an ancestor of the Adinka family, and Vincent was surprised that this brat had become their first patriarch. Arson had admired Davin greatly and even visited him in prison. He was upset about the injustice done to Davin and promised to restore his honor. However, after that, he never visited Davin again. Julian revealed that Arson became the first patriarch of the Adinka family, leaving them with a mission related to Julian's achievements, overcoming the Samian family and facing the truth. Vincent believed that Arson had promised him that he would uncover the truth, as he was someone who knew how Davin had been wronged. Vincent wasn't entirely sure, but he suspected that Arson Falker left the Falker family and created the Adinka family to confront the truth. Adinka was a new family established to restore Davin's honor. Vincent considered it his destiny to be born into Arson's family. He asked Julian if fulfilling his calling would make him a true god, and Julian affirmed this. If that happened, Davin would become the true owner of Vincent's body. Additionally, Julian would be able to bestow a blessing on Vincent. It was a mutually beneficial deal. Vincent expressed his gratitude to Arson, took a sword, and declared that he would carry on the mission Arson left behind. He vowed to surpass the Samian family, the family that had betrayed Davin. Julian teased Vincent, calling him old since he hailed from 500 years ago. As they continued their journey, Vincent wondered what kind of martial arts people from that time would practice, and how much martial arts had progressed over the centuries. He also pondered the strength of Kajan's descendants. However, his body felt increasingly heavy until he eventually fainted. The current body Vincent possesses is in a poor state. Without using mana to control it, he would not be able to live a normal life. After meditating, Vincent senses a flow of mana and calls out to Julian. He complains to Julian about why he did not learn to wield the sword when he had that body. Julian explains that he had a disability that prevented him from learning it. However, Vincent argues that he has the heavenly exoskeleton, which should have allowed him to learn swordsmanship. Julian is unaware of the heavenly exoskeleton, and Vincent explains that it allows him to store mana in any part of his body, particularly in his bones. Julian still doesn't fully comprehend the significance of what Vincent is saying. Vincent tries to explain it in a simpler term. A martial artist needs to use mana to possess strength beyond that of a normal human. The mana that enables miracles is typically stored in the heart, but with the heavenly exoskeleton, mana can be stored in the bones above the heart, allowing for infinite use of mana. Julian still doesn't grasp the importance of this information. Vincent mentions that the hero king, Kajan, whom everyone calls Kajin, also possessed the heavenly exoskeleton. It's ironic that Davin was reincarnated in the body of Kajan, whom he envied his entire life. However, the world 500 years later is stranger than he had anticipated. In a flashback, Julian explains that he cannot link the imagery to the heart. Vincent is confused about what he means by imagery. Julian clarifies that it is a method of storing mana, which each image represents a star, symbolizing the strength of a martial artist. In the past, they used to store mana in the physical body, but now they use imagery to avoid the risk of storing it in the heart. Vincent ponders the meditation method used by Falker, the first Adinka, to store mana in the heart. Julian is unfamiliar with the specific meditation method Vincent is referring to. Vincent explains that in Julian's time, they store mana in the imagery, and each martial artist creates at least one imagery, with the number of stars indicating their strength. However, Vincent decides to store mana in his heart, despite the risks, as he believes he needs to take that risk to be recognized as a proper martial artist. One-armed Gavin learned this method and grew stronger through it. Julian interrupts Vincent as he notices mana flowing everywhere and mentions the circuit formula for efficiently using mana. In Devin's time, they achieved this through touch, although not everyone succeeded and many died in the process. Julian advises Vincent to take care of his body and use it properly, as it is precious. Vincent questions Julian about why he subjected his own body to such conditions. Julian's body was born with the heavenly exoskeleton, a strong heart, and magic power circuit. If he had received proper training in the Samian family, he would have undoubtedly succeeded. The heavenly exoskeleton allows for the storage of mana, but also requires mana to be sustained. Julian's heavenly exoskeleton has been deprived of mana for 13 years, and at this state, Vincent's body will die before reaching adulthood. Later, Vincent meditates, knowing it will prevent his body's condition from worsening. But there is a limit. He may only have about 10 years left, which is more than enough time for the Storm Sword to become the Sword Emperor, and for Davin, the one-armed swordsman, to be forgotten by the world. Just then, someone knocks on the door, and Vincent's servant, Wilson, enters the room. Vincent requests Wilson to bring him clean clothes. Wilson is surprised by Vincent's increased strength and asks him what he has been doing to make the room messy. Wilson suspects that Vincent may have been practicing dark magic and considers alerting the Grand Chamberlain and informing the Patriarch. Vincent approaches Wilson in a threatening manner and reminds him of his duties as a servant. Although Wilson initially resists doing tasks he doesn't want to, Vincent's insistence convinces him to fulfill his responsibilities. Vincent decides to personally go to the big Chamberlain to request clean clothes, highlighting Wilson's unwillingness to work. This sudden change in Wilson's attitude prompts him to fulfill his duties, as being insolent and arrogant goes against his role as a servant. Julian shares the same belief, thinking that Vincent's position as the seventh young lord requires him to address the issue of a defiant and rude servant. Julian mentions that Wilson has a past as a gang member and claims he has killed many people. However, Vincent doubts the truth of this statement, as he senses no energy or guilt coming from Wilson's innocent eyes. Vincent's certainty stems from his own experiences in life. Julian becomes frightened, believing that Vincent has summoned something more terrifying than a spirit king. Unaware that Vincent is actually inhabiting Davin's body. After Wilson completes the laundry and cleaning, he notices that Vincent has become more submissive. Vincent then asks Wilson to bring him a 1-meter wooden sword made of black-smelling wood, weighing about 500 grams. Wilson refuses, stating that Vincent should go to the family warehouse himself to request such a sword, as Wilson's refusal to obey orders would be a problem. Unbeknownst to Wilson, warehouse keepers are exceptional martial artists and fiercely loyal to the direct descendants of the family. Wilson questions Vincent's behavior once again and attempts to touch him, but Vincent retaliates by knocking him down. Driven by his past traumatic experiences of being attacked from behind, despite the pain, Vincent's actions cause Wilson to reluctantly agree to follow Vincent's orders. Wilson is upset and determined not to lose to Vincent again. He brings the sword to Vincent in a less than satisfactory manner. Vincent comments on Wilson's background as a person who has led a difficult life, including losing his right arm, which causes Wilson to change his attitude and hand over the weapon properly, despite feeling embarrassed. Vincent recognizes the need for proper training and begins to undertake it, realizing that the heavenly exoskeleton he possesses is extremely weak. However, he didn't expect to feel such exhaustion after wielding the wooden sword a few times. Nevertheless, he finds it to be a satisfying experience, as everything indicates that his body was destined to be a martial artist. Shortly after, a man named Raven Adenka appears and effortlessly cuts the test dummy in half. It is clear that Vincent does not like Raven. Julian explains that Raven is a distant relative and one of the candidates predicted to win the True Swords Assembly. Julian warns Vincent to be cautious, as Raven is a rising star and highly skilled among the 13-year-olds in the Dinka family. Raven came to find Vincent because he believes that if he wins the True Swords Assembly, he will have to fight Vincent. The True Swords Assembly is a competition that brings together martial families related to the Adenka family, where participants fight with real swords. Although there's typically no age restriction, people usually participate in this event starting from the age of 14. The winner of the assembly gets the opportunity to fight against a direct descendant of the Adenka family, who is the same age. In this case, Vincent is considered the weakest of the direct descendants and will be the one to fight against the winner of the competition. Raven assumes that Vincent is afraid, but Vincent asserts that even provocations should be done with dignity and class. He is annoyed that Raven came to mock him, as the Daven without an arm was respected in both the training camp and the combat area. Vincent tells Raven that his manners were taught by his father, which angers Raven even more, causing him to hold a grudge against Vincent for disrespecting his father. Julian warns Vincent that Raven is at a 2-star level and possesses the attributes of a man of steel, making him theoretically stronger than Vincent. Vincent knows that if they were to fight now, he would lose. However, he cannot tolerate the feeling of inferiority that Raven was raised with as a collateral descendant. Raven is using mana, even though he knows Vincent cannot, which further adds to Vincent's irritation towards Raven's childish behavior. Vincent believes that someone like Raven would have received a beating from the elders of a family in his time. Both Vincent and Raven point their swords at each other, and Raven senses that Vincent could easily defeat him at any moment. Vincent puts a stop to the confrontation and warns Raven that the True Swords Assembly will involve more than just wooden swords. This infuriates Raven, and he attempts to attack Vincent, who shows no intention of dodging the attack, knowing that Raven cannot harm him. Just as Raven is about to strike, someone arrives to intervene and prevent any harm to Vincent. Vincent is informed that they will meet at the Assembly of the True Swords. Julian questions Vincent about why he provoked Raven earlier, to which Vincent responds that he was merely teaching a disrespectful child a lesson. Vincent is eager to learn more about their era through Julian's knowledge. They move on from discussing images and focus on blessings and traits. Julian explains that traits are artificially created from the analyzed power of blessings, essentially being man-made blessings. Vincent asks Julian if he can perform blessings, which Julian finds disrespectful to the gods. Julian responds that no one has been punished by the gods for it. Vincent mentions that Raven also possesses the trait Man of Steel. Julian explains that Raven's blessings encompass various aspects, but this trait specifically focuses on physical strength. The more one develops this trait, the more it unlocks new abilities, similar to a family tree. Man of Steel is a mid-level trait that enhances defense and destructive power. Julian argues that this trait allows them to become strong quickly. Vincent must adapt to these skills, as competing with someone like Raven is an achievement far beyond what anyone from Daven's time can accomplish. Meanwhile, Vincent continues training, and people notice that he only uses his left hand. They doubt that Vincent can effectively use his imagination in that way, especially since he starts to pant after a few hits. However, the vice leader, Merlin, advises them not to judge Vincent so hastily. While Merlin wants to defend Vincent, he understands why people view him as the disgrace of Adenka, as he wields his sword aimlessly without any mana or trait, destined to be despised. Julian suggests training in a forest, but Vincent is accustomed to being looked down upon. He recalls how nobody expected Davin to defeat Cajun single-handedly, yet he did and earned praise instead of a ridicule. Merlin then gives Vincent an advanced recovery potion to aid in training and introduces himself. Vincent is surprised that Merlin doesn't mock Vincent, considering he had done so earlier. However, Merlin notices that Vincent's eyes seem desperate for something. Vincent informs Merlin that he will remember his name. Vincent continues his physical training, physically and theoretically, balancing on his right leg, turning his hip, and feeling the mana in his heart. He starts to visualize the path of swords, represented by dots and lines, to manifest his skills. He strikes the practice dummy and successfully cuts it in two, completing his sword strike. Later, Wilson expresses annoyance at Vincent's training, as it increases his workload. He serves Vincent breakfast, but Vincent immediately realizes that Wilson has stolen some of the food without even wiping his mouth. Vincent lets it go this time, but makes it clear that he doesn't want Wilson to cross the line. Wilson begins to threaten Vincent, claiming to have been a former gangster who killed many people. However, Vincent remains unfazed and communicates telepathically, stating that controlling through fear is easy but useless. This surprises Wilson, as he didn't expect Vincent to be able to use mana. Vincent tells Wilson to stop acting proud and stand by his side, as he will soon have no reason to be ashamed of being associated with him. Vincent gives Wilson two choices: be ruled by fear or show loyalty. Wilson leaves, denying any loyalty towards Vincent, although his expression after leaving suggests otherwise. Meanwhile, Merlin observes the training ground and notices that Vincent finished training early in the day. Additionally, he observes that Vincent managed to cut a dummy. He believes that Vincent managed to cut with a real blade, even though he only used wooden swords. It takes a great deal of skill to achieve such a cut. Merlin wonders what kind of martial arts Vincent is learning. Wilson, the idiot, has become very polite. Vincent mentions something about the clothes being made of lavender. Vincent mentions something about the clothes being made of cotton, which is profitable but damages the floor. The clothes are not suitable for a nobleman, and the food quality is low compared to the family's budget. This suggests that someone is stealing money, although Wilson denies any involvement and suspects someone higher up. Raven is training and recalls how impressive Vincent looked with a simple wooden sword, which angers him. Raven's father visits him and emphasizes the urgency of the true sword's assembly. He insists that Raven must defeat Vincent to escape poverty and the pain of the branch families. Raven's father becomes increasingly irritable and obsessed as the assembly approaches. Raven desires to defeat Vincent to restore his family's former status. The focus now shifts back to Julian, who has gathered information about the participants in the True Swords competition, including their personal details and techniques. Julian sees this as a compliment and plans to make a grand entrance using the strength of the Spirit King and the Mana Crystal. Vincent understands Julian's desire to win, but assures him that he will secure a more valuable victory. Vincent calls upon Wilson to do something for him, which intimidates Wilson. Vincent instructs Wilson to meet with the Great Chamberlain, Railsa, and inform her that Vincent wants the head of the family to directly observe the True Swords assembly. Railsa mentions that the head of the family has never done so and sees no reason to. Wilson suggests that this is the consequence of budget embezzlement, surprising Railsa. After Wilson leaves, Railsa contemplates Vincent's intentions and wonders why he didn't come himself. She believes it would have been more effective if he had threatened her directly, but understands that he sent Wilson to assert his authority. Railsa then goes to the head of the family, Patriarch Khan, to inform him that Vincent has invited her to the True Swords. Assembly. The head of the family remains cold towards the idea, doubting Vincent's skill and the value of his lineage. Railsa pleads with him to attend the event, even offering her own head as a wager if Vincent fails to prove his worth. The chief doesn't understand her motives, but recognizes that she intentionally revealed the budget embezzlement for Vincent's sake. He sees no reason to interfere, as Railsa is technically that woman's servant. but acknowledges her determination and dignity. Regardless, he agrees to attend the True Swords assembly. Finally, the day of the assembly has arrived. The competitors enter the arena, and Raven is determined to defeat Vincent. He notices Khan's presence and is surprised, thinking Khan is there to watch his performance. Raven does not want to miss the opportunity to defeat Vincent in front of the Patriarch. The assembly of the True Swords begins, and Raven easily wins his first confrontation, making his father proud. Raven is known as a rising star because he is young and already has impressive attributes. It is likely that a collateral descendant like Raven would win the competition for the first time. Vincent, watching based on the standards of 500 years ago, sees that everyone there is a genius, but lacks depth in martial arts. Vincent notices that their moves lack fighting experience and seem like dancing puppets. This is probably why Raven is able to use traits and attack recklessly. Raven thinks Vincent will run away, but Vincent continues to fight. Raven beats all the competitors and then challenges Vincent as the last fight of the assembly. Vincent accepts the challenge, and they both go to the fighting arena. The referee, Zeron, belonging to the White Sword Unit, will start the fight. However, Vincent interrupts with a condition. He will use a wooden sword and his left hand to fight, and Raven will have 3 attacks first. Until these 3 attacks are completed, Vincent will not move. Raven asks Vincent what he is doing, thinking he is being mocked. The audience also finds this absurd and believes Vincent knows nothing about martial arts. Raven's father steps in, accusing Vincent of making excuses for his future loss. Khan allows Vincent's conditions, but warns him to prove his words with actions. The fight is about to start, and they both prepare. Raven immediately attacks with a short stab, followed by feint attacks. Vincent can see through Raven's moves, deflecting the attacks with one hand. Raven is surprised by Vincent's strength. Vincent had let Raven have 2 attacks first, and now it is his turn to attack. Raven kneels before Vincent, surprising everyone. Raven's father angrily questions why he is struggling against someone who cannot use mana. Raven and Julian do not understand what is happening. Vincent explains that it is a basic unarmed fight, and standing there without a blade is not the way of a true martial artist. There are many ways to suppress an opponent without weapons. Raven realizes that Vincent has obtained a trait given by a small minor god, but it does not bother Vincent. Raven prepares to attack again, but Vincent dodges and counters with a punch to the neck. However, this does not hurt Raven, as a practiced sword cannot break through his defenses. Vincent, using the power of his downward punch, hits Raven in the stomach. He then asks the referee to do his best to prevent a tragedy. Vincent has a single opportunity to use his ability, but using it once will cause his body to collapse. He must finish the fight while Raven is still airborne. Raven tries to defend himself, but Vincent can anticipate and see through his attacks using a mysterious sword technique. Vincent instructs Julian to pay close attention to this mastered sword technique. Vincent successfully lands a hit on Raven, capturing the attention of even the Patriarch. Vincent employs the sword to cut through everything, including Raven's ability, known as the Absolute Sword. Raven experiences pain in his arm as Vincent's blows tears it off. Vincent orders Zeron to stop the fight, as there is a clear winner. Raven's father enters the battlefield to assist his son's wounds, prompting the need to call for a priest. Despite maintaining his composure, Vincent's body is on the edge, but he cannot afford to collapse at this crucial moment.